Something is happening in grocery stores across America. Shelves that used to hold 1 or 2 fermented products now stretch for entire aisles. Prices are climbing, supply is tightening, and most shoppers have no idea why. This is not a coincidence. This is a shift in how millions of people eat, and it is moving faster than the supply chain can keep up with. By the time most people notice, the good stuff will already be gone. Here are the 9 fermented foods taking over shelves right now, counted down to the one product driving the biggest disruption of all. Number 9. Kvass. Kvass is a fermented rye bread drink. Tangy, lightly sour, barely sweet. 6 months ago, most Americans had never heard of it. Now it is showing up in specialty grocers and health food chains from coast to coast. Small batch producers cannot keep bottles on the shelf. Why? Gut health searches have exploded, and kvass rides that wave as a low-sugar alternative to soda. Production is slow. Fermentation takes days, not minutes. Demand does not wait for days. Every week, this gap widens. Prices creep higher, and kvass is only the beginning. Number 8. Tepache. Tepache, the fermented pineapple drink born in Mexican kitchens, has quietly become one of the fastest-growing beverages in the country. Grocery buyers say it moves off shelves twice as fast as kombucha did during its early boom, and that is not a small comparison, because kombucha eventually became a multi-billion-dollar category. Restaurants are putting it on menus, influencers are brewing it at home. Recipes for it are spreading faster than most producers can respond to. But pineapple rinds, the base ingredient, are not infinite, and large-scale tepache production is still catching up to demand. Commercial kitchens that used to throw those rinds away are now fielding calls from beverage startups trying to buy them in bulk. When a niche drink starts outselling established brands, that is not a trend. That is a warning sign for anyone who wants to try it before it becomes impossible to find at a normal price. And the next food on this list has an even tighter supply problem. Number 7. Natto. Natto, the sticky, pungent, fermented soybean staple of Japan, has crossed over into American wellness circles almost overnight. Nutrition researchers point to its rare vitamin K2 content, and word has spread fast among people trying to protect their long-term health. Online communities built entirely around bone and heart health have turned natto into a near obsession, recommending it daily, and grocery buyers are scrambling to respond. The problem is supply. Natto requires a very specific fermentation process and specific soybean varieties, cultivated under conditions most domestic farms are not set up for. Import channels are limited, shipping costs are rising, and domestic production is still small compared to the sudden spike in interest. As American demand rises, Japanese suppliers are being pulled in 2 directions at once, forced to choose between their home market and an export market that is growing every single month. Shoppers here are starting to feel the squeeze, and it is only going to tighten. Number 6. Miso. Miso used to be a quiet pantry staple, something tucked in the back of the fridge for the occasional soup. Not anymore. Search interest has surged as home cooks discover it as an instant flavor bomb for soups, marinades, dressings, and even baked goods. Major chains have doubled their miso shelf space in the last year alone, and it is still not enough to keep up. Behind the scenes, miso takes months, sometimes years, to properly ferment. You cannot rush it. You cannot mass produce your way out of a shortage overnight, no matter how much capital gets thrown at the problem. That means every surge in demand today becomes a shelf gap tomorrow, and every shelf gap tomorrow becomes a price increase the week after that. And the next food on this list is already feeling that same pressure, only worse. Number 5. Tempeh. Tempeh, the firm, fermented soybean cake, has become the go-to meat alternative for people trying to cut back on ultra-processed food. Plant-based eating has gone mainstream, and tempeh is one of its biggest beneficiaries, prized for its texture, its protein content, and the fact that it is made from whole ingredients instead of a lab-formulated patty. But tempeh production depends on live fermentation cultures and careful temperature control, which makes it far harder to scale than a factory-made veggie burger. One temperature swing, one contaminated batch, and an entire production run is lost. Some regional brands have already reported temporary stock shortages during peak demand weeks. If demand keeps climbing at this pace, tempeh could become the first mainstream protein to face real, sustained availability problems in the next year. Not just occasional empty shelves, but genuine scarcity.
Number 4. Kefir. Kefir, the tangy fermented milk drink, has moved from niche health food to a full mainstream category. Dairy sections that once stocked a single kefir brand now carry 6 or 7, and they are still selling out during peak shopping days, sometimes within hours of restocking. The driving force is gut health awareness, especially among younger shoppers who grew up hearing about probiotics and now treat them as a daily non-negotiable. But kefir grains, the living culture needed to make it, are far more delicate to scale than standard dairy fermentation. They cannot simply be manufactured on demand. They have to be cultivated, maintained, and passed down through careful handling. Producers are racing to expand capacity, building new fermentation facilities and training new staff, but right now, they are barely keeping pace with the category.
Number 3. Sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is not new. It has been a pantry staple for generations, sitting quietly on shelves next to pickles and relish. What is new is the surge in demand for the raw, unpasteurized, living version, the kind packed with active probiotic cultures, instead of the shelf-stable, jarred version most people grew up with. That distinction matters because raw sauerkraut needs refrigeration, careful handling, and a much shorter shelf life than its pasteurized cousin. Stores are struggling to keep the cold chain version stocked as more shoppers specifically seek it out by name, walking past the shelf-stable jars entirely to hunt for the refrigerated version in the back. This is not just nostalgia. This is a full category shift happening in real time, and it is catching supply chains flat-footed. Number 2. Kimchi. Kimchi has exploded far beyond Korean grocery stores. Mainstream supermarkets now dedicate entire refrigerated sections to it, something that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Restaurant chains are putting it on menus that have nothing to do with Korean cuisine, from burger joints to sandwich shops, folding it into dishes as a flavor booster. Global interest in Korean food and culture has pulled kimchi straight into the center of the fermented food boom, and demand has outpaced what many producers expected even a year ago. Cabbage sourcing, fermentation time, and cold storage all create bottlenecks that a viral trend cannot fix overnight, no matter how fast a brand wants to scale. The result? Rising prices, rotating shortages, and shoppers who used to grab kimchi without a second thought now sometimes finding empty shelf space instead, forced to check 3 stores just to find their usual jar. And that brings us to number 1, kombucha. Kombucha did not just join the fermented food boom, it built the shelf space that made room for everything else on this list. What started as a niche health drink is now a multi-billion-dollar category, sitting in nearly every grocery store, gas station, and coffee shop cooler in the country. The scale is staggering, and it keeps growing year after year, pulling in new drinkers who never would have touched it a decade ago. But kombucha's rapid rise has exposed real fragility in its supply chain. Fermentation tanks, quality control, and the SCOBY cultures needed to brew it all take real time to expand, and none of it can be rushed without risking the product itself. When demand spikes faster than production can follow, something has to give. That is exactly what is happening now, and it is reshaping how every fermented food on this list reaches your local store, from the biggest brand on the shelf down to the smallest local producer trying to keep up. Fermented foods are not a passing fad. They are becoming a permanent part of how people shop and eat, and the supply chains behind them were never built to move this fast. Grocery chains that once treated fermented products as a small specialty section are now scrambling to redesign entire aisles around them, and even that is not moving fast enough. Every product on this list shares the same problem. Real fermentation cannot be rushed, no matter how high the demand climbs or how much money gets poured into expansion. That mismatch between slow-made food and fast-growing demand is exactly why shelves are tightening and prices are creeping upward across the board, quietly, one restock at a time, until shoppers start noticing the gaps for themselves. The takeaway is simple. If any of these 9 foods have earned a place in your routine, the smart move is to buy them consistently now, while they are still easy to find, instead of waiting until the shortage becomes obvious to everyone else. Watch the shelves. Watch the prices. The pattern is